Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Those who accept the idea that there is no such thing as morality are weak. Very, very weak. Denying the existence of morality is a sign of weakness. I mean that in a condescending, condemning kind of way because these are bad people. And what they're actually doing is going along with the suffering that they've endured. A lot of people get divorce raped or actually raped or they're beaten growing up, whatever it is, but especially if it happens to them later in life, the suffering that they go through, instead of holding on to their morals, they choose to be shaped by the suffering. And so they let go of their morals because that, in a sense, makes them stronger. But that's not true strength. It's foolishness, it's predatoriness, it's short-sightedness, it's hedonism, it's weakness. If you believe in right and wrong, you're morally obligated to fight for good and fight evil, right? You want to make good stronger in the world and make evil weaker in the world and in yourself as well, right? But if you tell yourself that there is no right and wrong, then you don't have to fight evil, right? Like if there's a real right and wrong, then you're pretty much morally obligated to do the right thing and to fight for the right side. But if you tell yourself there is no right or wrong, then you don't have to fight evil. And you don't have to try to make good things happen like Zeitgeist Eater is doing. How he's coding the mirror into existence in order to keep free speech alive. You don't have to try to do anything like that if there is no good or evil. You see? So it's a form of laziness to not believe in good and evil. And it's also a form of delusion. It's very similar to how women get Stockholm Syndrome. They're kidnapped and then they start identifying with their kidnapper and they kind of start taking his side, helping him, protecting to him, lying for him, etc. It makes sense to, even after, some of them even do it after they're rescued by the cops and stuff. They still take the bad guy's side, they refuse to testify against him in court or whatever. This has happened. I think that happened in that first case that made the whole Stockholm Syndrome a thing, they made up this term for it to describe it, what happened in that case, right? It makes sense that women do this because women are survivors no matter what. So whatever has power over them, they will take that person's side. Of course, this loyalty does not last because as soon as it's advantageous for them to take the other side, like if their side is getting overrun, then they'll take the other side. They'll just take whatever side they have to at the moment. They're just flippers. They're flip-floppers according to expediency and survival. This is how women are, so that's how it is. But what people don't believe in morality are doing, the people who don't believe in morality, what they're actually doing, they're doing the whole Stockholm Syndrome thing. They're doing the exact same thing as women do, basically, because they're allowing the suffering to shape them in a bad way. Just like women allow their captors to shape them in a bad way, you see? So people who allow suffering to destroy their sense of morality or whatever, these people were either always psychopaths, and so are not actually destroying their morals because they never had any in the first place. They're just surrendering more of their morals because they never truly had any morals in the first place. Or they did have morals, but they go over the moral event horizon, so to speak, and so they become immoral. They give up on the idea of morality. They give up on all the good things, like principles, like truth, compassion, generosity, etc. They give up on all these things so that they can survive, but what they're doing is weakness, and they're basically identifying with evil. They're allowing their suffering to shape them in a negative way. And it's almost identical to Stockholm Syndrome, except for the fact that they're not surrendering to a person or identifying with an oppressive person. They're instead surrendering to the suffering, and they're making excuses for the suffering and the immorality that the suffering pressured them to embrace. A lot of people do this. Bad things have happened to them, but they're like, well, it was a good thing because it made me stronger. It's like, no, you can be made strong without having trauma done to you. Without having destructive trauma done to you, like being raped or tortured or whatever, you don't have to be traumatized and destroyed to be made quote unquote stronger. So people are just making excuses for the suffering they've been put through because they were shaped by the suffering to become a more evil person, and so they have to make excuses for the suffering which shaped them in a negative way because they caved. They gave in. They allowed themselves to be negatively shaped by the suffering instead of being positively shaped by it or not being shaped by it at all. So this is kind of how it is. It's a very Stockholm Syndrome type of thing that people who don't believe in morality, right? Like especially when they're making excuses for their own evil, right? Or the hardships that they've gone through, right? What would be a good example? Like for example, this one chick who was like kidnapped and like held in a basement and used as a sex slave for years, and then she finally escaped. She bought the house where she was abused in and stuff. She did fill in the basement. She got rid of it. where she was kept, but still, she bought that house and like she still keeps it. You know, I don't remember if that's her main house, if she lives there, but like, that's crazy, right? Like, that's insane. But like, people do stuff like that. They do the equivalent of that when they make excuses for the suffering that caused them to become more evil people. You know, it's like they're also assuming that there's no way to not give up your morals and also, you know, evolve or, you know, get stronger or whatever. I mean, who says that's the case, right? Just because they weren't able to see the answer, you know, because they didn't have someone clever to help them, you know, think up, you know, mental strategies to preserve their morality while under this severe pressure that they were under, that, you know, they didn't have anybody to help them or whatever, and they weren't clever enough to figure out how to hold on to their morality under that pressure. But that doesn't mean it's not possible to hold on to your morality under pressure like that. It just means they weren't able to, you know, and I'm not even blaming them because, you know, when bad things happen, it's like people, you know, most people are not super smart, so a lot of people give up on morality when that seems like the only way to survive, but it's really not. And so even after the suffering is over, they still maintain that lack of morality, and they make excuses for it, thinking that it's strength because they embraced it wholeheartedly because they felt that they had to in order to survive. You know what I mean? When they were under that pressure. So this is a very Stockholm Syndrome type of thing, continuing to make excuses for the abuse that they suffered or whatever, in the sense that like they keep making excuses for it in as much as like what I'm saying is like that by proclaiming that, well, yeah, it was a bad thing, but at least it made me stronger. You know, like this lauding of the silver lining, I think, is a form of making excuses for the hardship itself, for the trauma itself. And so this is a very Stockholm Syndrome type of thing, and it's a bad thing. And it's a sign of massive weakness if you don't believe in morality. You know, these people are weak. These people who don't believe in morality are weak. They're weak, they're lazy, and they're deluded, and it's really that simple. This has been Redshift, Peace Trucks for Promiscuous Men, because they are the cause of gynocentrism, and they don't have any interest in changing their gynocentric, society-destroying behavior.